Good day, Frank.
It's presentation day. So presentation day is a big day. Presenting new branding to a client, it's exciting. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking. It could be a lot of anticipation for both of us, both for me, both for my client. Now today's client is heyCarrrl, or Kyle. It's been an absolute legend to work with, and I'm going to take him through his logo and visual identity that I've made for his videographer business. First, I need to eat my breakfast. So what I'm going to show you is a visual identity, the start to end process of how I produce a visual identity for a client. This doesn't include strategy, this doesn't include messaging, this doesn't include an internal identity. It wasn't part of the brief, but to do so, let's go back a few days. So one night, I'm sitting on the couch, I've finished my work for the day, I'm watching TV, I'm scrolling, it's nearly midnight, I should be in bed, and I get this notification. And it's a message from an account called heyCarrrl. And in that message, I find out that his name is Kyle, not Carl. And he asked me this: "G'day Frank, just wanted to ask you what you'd suggest the best place to go for a visual identity / branding is." And I replied, "Mate, if you wanted to work with me, I'd be down." And so we had a few messages back and forward. Now Kyle's a fellow creative. He can do logo design, he can do website design, he can do a lot of other creative things other than the videography that he specializes in. So I asked him why not do it himself? And the words to the effect were, sometimes you just need someone else to do this for you. And this is where Kyle came from. He wanted somebody else to do this for him, to kind of get out of his own way. So he booked a call, had a chat on Google Meet, and hashed it out. For this kind of workshop, I take someone through about 20 questions, ask them all about their business, why they started it, why they called it that, who he's up against, and what his customers are expecting. Now, if we fast forward a few days, I'm back in my office. I'm thinking more about what heyCarrrl can be, and I'm at the whiteboard, I'm at my desk, I'm walking around the house and trying to find some kind of concept that would best associate with the heyCarrrl brand. So I need to come up with a concept. I need to pull the concept out of thin air, kind of, because Kyle didn't give me all that much to go on in terms of a concept to rely on. Now, I listened back to our conversation in that workshop, and I found this little tidbit that Kyle said.
And often I'll even lie too about the camera being on, because I always tell them that the first responses of me just like explaining things and talking usually get the best responses, because as soon as you click that record button, it's just, people can't think. Oh, is it on? Is it on?
Yeah.
And then it's just there's a mental block that just shows up. So yeah.
Now this idea was like a little spark, a little gem, a little nugget to kind of cling to and not let go of, because it was a basis of what made his process different, what might mean someone chooses him over somebody else. And that might not be evident until they experience that process with Kyle. But this idea, this keeping the record button going, especially before the shoot starts, to capture those little gems, those little moments that someone will give before they turn the record button on and they see that little red dot. And that's kind of where I started from, that red dot. All right, so after a lot of different variations of logos, trying and testing different types of styles, I kind of landed at this, and I think this is working. It's this tennis ball green, which I think he was kind of using throughout his branding subtly here and there, but it stands out a bit like pink, and contrasting it against this darker green, which I was using on this initial concept that I had with the red record light, but that record light just felt a little scary because the red record light is a bit ominous for people, and everyone sort of seizes up from it, and that's something that Kyle has said throughout his workshop. But I think this kind of works. The font pairing works, a thinner font for Hey, and then a thicker font for Carl, both the serif kind of typeface. These nice little inkwells I've found in this particular typeface as well, which is nice. And then because it's one word, to create something that could work together but delineate the two. So you do read it as heyCarrrl, even though it is written as one word with a capital C in between. But I think it needed something else that I could add to it to make it something that was unique and bake in an idea. And I went back to our workshop recording. So at the start of a project, when he's setting up the cameras and someone's getting ready in front of the camera, one of his clients to say their piece, usually those moments at the start are much more organic and they feel relaxed and comfortable without knowing that the camera is rolling. And then when the camera is rolling, they'll ask, hey, are we rolling? And he says, are we recording? And he can say, yeah, we're rolling. And that idea of rolling film, not that that happens anymore with digital cameras, but rolling film, and how can I integrate that within here in a clever way that kind of shows that movement, I guess. And I came up with this idea of lobbing off the bottom of the C, shifting it down to the baseline, and then moving that lobbed off bit of C up to the top of the C. And I think that kind of works. I can obviously animate that, which is good. And I think that might be a goer. And I just need to stress test this now. Do some typography, make sure the colors work, and see where it takes us.
Later.
Okay, I've done this. I've stress tested the brand elements a little bit with typography especially, but I'm gonna bring it in a bit closer here. So with the different brand colors, so we've got the tennis ball yellow, green, and the dark green, and then obviously white, to see how typography can work in those different contexts, and then how I can bring together the fonts that I've chosen. So for the heyCarrrl logo, we've got two different typefaces, or fonts, I'd probably say. And then to highlight a certain word in that heading, we can use the bolder version. And then I've got these subheadings, body copy, call to actions, and buttons that are in another different typeface. And what I tend to do is if I can't use the typeface that I have or the fonts that I use for the main headings and maybe even subheadings that integrate with the logo, I try and create that nice little tie-in if I can. Then I'll just use a generic, more generic, let's say, Google font or Google typeface, in this case DM Sans, for the body copy, just to make sure it's legible. The next thing is to do some mock-ups. So I'll bash some of them out. I really like to do a lot of them. I go to town on them to really stress test them more. So let me take you through some of them when I am done.
One eternity later.
Okay, magic of television. I am back with some mock-ups. I've dropped them into the first part of a presentation that I'm going to make, and I'll take you through that after. But these are the mock-ups that I've created here. So what I want to try and see is how this brand identity, this visual identity, can really work in context for my client's real world. So giving them real life mock-up looking elements. These are all done in Photoshop, and it really shows my clients what it could look like in their real world, but bridges effectively concept with reality. So it bridges that gap between the two. And this is the reason why I do these mock-ups, because you need to bridge the gap between concept and reality. It's really hard to envisage what a logo is going to look like in context, because I see a lot of logo designers just present a logo on a page and go, what do you think? And that is ridiculously hard. Even as a branding person, I can't envisage a logo beyond that on a page. I need to see it in context. I need to see it living and breathing, so that when you bring message and color and logos and fonts and typography and imagery and even sounds and motion to things, you see how it can work in the real world. You get a good, confident understanding about what this is going to do, what this is going to look like, how it's going to sound. And with Kyle's branding, I created an animated version of his logo with this nice little reveal video using some of his footage. You can see it here. And this just sells the idea that little bit more to get somebody like Kyle, especially as a videographer, excited for a logo. You know, it's pretty much just a logo by itself, really boring. But when you put it together with all these other different stylistic elements, it becomes something more than a logo. It becomes something that someone can remember, can very much identify, recognize, think of, because of all these different assets, all these different associations that we can help create to make sure that someone does remember someone like Kyle and his business, heyCarrrl. Yeah. Okay, so this is my presentation. It's a template that I use, but this is a template I use just for visual identities. I have one for my messaging and my brand strategy and internal identity parts that typically get shown at a different time. I don't show visual identities at the same time as the other stuff. So this is the presentation. I go through sequentially just so it's not an overload of information. Look at colors, showing the colors just in simple tiles. There might be a bit of a rationale behind the colors that I'll explain. And then we get into typography. So showing the different fonts or typefaces and their different weights, and then looking at the typography. So again, what I showed you earlier, especially in the different colorways. And then I get to the logo, showing what kind of concept is behind the logo, what kind of idea, what kind of symbology it has that integrates with all the other parts I might have created before, like messaging and that internal identity and that strategy, if I've done that as well. So for Kyle's presentation here, I had that logo reveal video and then showed the logo statically after that in different colorways with a tagline beneath it, in a stacked version, the tagline, and put it into some things like a poster or a social media post, again, to show this kind of bold graphic elements that could be done. And this is where I got into the mock-ups. So yada, 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 I've already shown you these. And then by the end of this kind of presentation, if you will, we'll have probably chatted through and I'm gauging their, let's say, their first impressions. And if there's any feedback, fantastic. We go through and we can talk about some of the things that in first impression, what might need to change. But typically it's fairly minimal changes. And we don't need to do a lot of changes as a result of this. And so we talk next steps. But now the presentation is done. I need to book a call with Kyle now, and in a few days, if not tomorrow maybe, now that that's done, I can present it to him. Okay, I have booked in a time with Kyle. It's going to be tomorrow evening. But this is the problem. If I present at night, I'm going to be thinking about this all day. And I don't know if you might relate to this too, if you are a branding person or some kind of creative services provider where you have a presentation date to share something and you're left kind of waiting for it to happen. You mull it over, you roam around the house or around the office, you stare longingly out the window. You have to go and do all the different things around your house or chores or things you do during the day. It might be client work. It might be putting away the dishes, getting your kids from school, going for a walk, just to pad the day out so it becomes quicker. I work with a lot of clients around the world, and Kyle is over in Canada, so our time zones don't match up all that well. And I got to wait until tomorrow night. So we'll fast forward to tomorrow. Okay, I'm all set. I've got my presentation ready. It's nearly game time.
It is time.
Yeah, I've done everything I can. I've got all my slides. It's all there. It's all ready to go. I just have to wait for the call time, wait to see Kyle's face, and just do it. In the words of Nike, just do it and get excited about it. Because I think if you are not excited about what it is you are putting forward to somebody, you're not confident in the work that you are delivering, I kind of figure, why should a client be confident and enthusiastic about it? Okay, so this is why I do one concept and really get behind it, not showing all the other different ones I'm not so sold on. Because always one is going to be your favorite. And that's why I do that one concept. All right, wish me luck.
1 hour later.
Okay, that went really well. Yeah, the word I'm going to use is positive. I think the feedback that and the general demeanor that Kyle had, his feedback was very positive. Very much, I think, happy with what I had produced, which is a great sign from the get-go. And he seemed genuinely excited for what's to come now as a result. So look, we'll see what happens. If there's any revisions that needs to be done, the feedback, again, generally positive, and we move on to the next step now, which, bloody exciting. Yes! So that is my process. That's how I go about creating a visual identity and branding in general. It starts with that workshop. It then proceeds into either that strategy and internal identity and messaging, and then into the visual identity. But in this case, just the visual identity, putting it all together in a nice package to present and show my client how it could work in their real world, and then produce the final deliverables. And this is where I'm producing a brand style guide in this case. Usually it's a full brand guide with their strategy, their internal identity, and their messaging, and then their visuals. But in this case, it's just a style guide. We're just looking at their visual identity, what all the fonts are, what the color values are for CMYK and RGB, and then all the font files, and then all the logo files. And that's the package that is delivered to my clients, and that's what they get. The presentation day is done and dusted. A few weeks ago, Kyle came back with no revisions. He's got his assets, he's published them on his website, he's given me this nice little bit of feedback as a testimonial. And as a result, I've been able to share it here online, on my social media, on YouTube here, obviously. And it's now the end of the week. I get to reward myself with a little bit of PlayStation time to play a little bit of Star Wars as this Star Wars fanboy that I am. And of course, I have a pink controller. But with that, give the video a like, subscribe if you like what I got going on here, and I will see you in my next video next week. Yeah, bye.
I just wanna have fun, turn around now.